Now, in the process of becoming that person is where the decisions are going to come into play, right? You got to make decisions aligned with who it is you want to be. But those decisions are a lot easier to make. This is discipline, right? Discipline is choosing what you want more over what you want now. If you're super clear on what you want in the future, very easily to stay disciplined. Why do people get distracted with pornography? Why do people get distracted on social media? Why do people get distracted all day throughout their entire life? Because they don't know what they want. There's no clear end destination. So the next distraction is very easily going to take you off track and off target.
You are listening to Personal Development Mastery Podcast, where you will find inspirational conversations and actionable takeaways to master yourself and improve your life. I am your host, 𝗁𝗁𝗄𝗆𝗲. A few years ago, I found myself unfulfilled and unmotivated, like I had lost my sense of purpose and my life was merely passing by. Since then, I've been on a continuous journey of personal development that has transformed every aspect of my life. Now, my mission is to inspire you to grow, stand out, and take action towards a purposeful and fulfilling life. In this podcast, I invite myself inside the minds of remarkable entrepreneurs, authors, thought leaders, spiritual teachers, people who share their journey, milestones, and learnings for you to be inspired to grow. In each episode, you will find actionable takeaways that you can implement right now. So make sure you follow the podcast to get them as soon as they are released. In today's show, I am delighted to speak with 𝗁𝗁𝗺. Frank, you are a former bodybuilder, entrepreneur, and a men's health and recovery coach. You are also the host of the top-ranked podcast, 𝗁𝗶human Life, which is dedicated to helping men break free from the shackles of addiction. You are on a mission to help men take back control of their lives, body, mind, and heart. Frank, welcome to the show. It's a real pleasure to speak with you today.
Yeah, incredible honor to be here with you today, Agi.
I'm looking forward to this conversation very much, and I will start, Frank. I want to ask some elements of your story. So from bodybuilding to men's health and recovery coach, give us one or two key defining moments along this journey.
Yeah, wow, what a great question, Agi. I think for me, all of this started, so a very defining moment in my life was, I believe it was the summer of when I was 12 or 13 years old. So I grew up in South Florida. You know, there was beaches, there was pools. I was an athletic kid, so I participated and played in a lot of sports. So I was very active, but also at the same time, like we weren't the healthiest family. Like, you know, we ate, dinner out of boxes sometimes. Like we always had food. It was just, we didn't really pay a lot of attention to what type of foods that we were eating. So by 12, 13, I can remember being a little bit insecure in the way that my body looked. So much to the point, Agi, that I got a chance to spend the summer with my cousin. My cousin was 1 year older than me. So think about the mind of a 12-year-old boy. Now he's going to hang out with boys that are 13 years old. And with 13-year-old boys come 13-year-old girls, right? So this was the first time I was at a pool in that summer where I felt unconfident taking my shirt off. I was so embarrassed that I was the husky kid and that there were older boys that had chiseled abs and had muscles, and I didn't have that. And I remember the pain of that summer. I remember the feeling of how insecure I was to take my shirt off around women, around girls, around other boys as well. So I think that was a defining moment for me, that when I got to the point where I could begin to make choices and decisions for myself, I went all in bodybuilding. So when I graduated high school, I literally moved away. That first summer, I dedicated my life to transforming my body. So much to the point where I literally lost like 30 pounds and put 30 pounds of fat and put on like 20 pounds of muscle in like a very short window of time. So I caught the bug very early on. And the bug was me showing myself that if I put in work over a shortened period of time, that I could produce the results that I was looking for. So I think the first defining moment was that summer when I was 12 or 13 years old, that feeling of pain, right? And I held on to that pain, and that pain really, really fueled me through my 20s and early 30s. And I think the second defining moment in my life was October 22nd of 2018. And for me, this was the day that my life changed, because this was the day I brought my faith into my life. So I'd always been somebody that had been on a pursuit. I'd been studying personal development, Tony Robbins, attending the seminars, seeking answers to all the questions I had in life. And a lot of what I found led me to some success in the world. But when I achieved success in the world and I didn't have anything to really build that foundation on, I was just as unhappy as I was at that 12-year-old kid, right? So second defining moment was the day that I accepted Christ into my life, which was October 22nd, 2018.
I will ask a bit about the second one, and then there is also something about the first. But since you many times we find that this external success does not come along with internal fulfillment, and it's always a realization when that happens, and it happens to many people. I wanted to ask, when you said you brought faith into your life and you gave a very specific date, so do you want to elaborate a bit more on what happened on that day and it remained so remarkable in you to know the date by heart?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, man, I was chasing success. I was chasing accomplishments. I was chasing knowledge. What I thought at the time was wisdom. Like I said, I was an insecure kid, right? I lacked a lot of confidence in the way that my body looked. We didn't come from, great success within our family. We always had enough, but we never had what the kids down the corner had or the other kids at school. And I thought that if I could achieve monetary success, then I would be happy. Because when I looked at my family, when I looked at, the home that I was living in, I love my parents to death, but they didn't get along. There was a lot of anger. There was a lot of fighting. There was a lot of tension. When I looked at my aunts and uncles, I was like, they're struggling with addiction. Like they're not happy as well. Why is everybody in our family miserable, unhappy, and depressed? When I look out in the world, there's all these successful people. So I connected the dots that success creates happiness. So for me, 20s and 30s was about chasing success, was about monetary success, was about how quickly can I make six figures. I accomplished that at 21 years old. How expensive was my car? How expensive was the watch? How expensive was the clothes that I was wearing? How much money was I able to spend at a club or at a bar or at a restaurant on a weekend? These were all things that I thought were going to make me happy. And when I accomplished them and I reached the top there, or whatever it was in my eyes, to me, that was the top. And I felt just as bad, if not worse than I had before. It was like, this isn't the answer. And I had been in business for 6 years in 2017. I had been running a few different companies. We had a little bit of success, but in January of 2017, I hired a business coach because I wanted to get into the online fitness marketing space. And I knew that if I was going to enter into a new industry and category, I needed to buy some time. I needed to get some expert help. So I joined a mastermind. And in that mastermind, my life changed in a lot of different ways. Obviously, I learned internet marketing. I learned content creation. Everything I'm doing with our companies now is a product of those things that I started to learn back in 2017. But what it really showed to me is through this mastermind, I got connected with guys that were having massive impact. I talked about my dad, right? My dad was he was providing for the family, blue collar guy, getting out there, busting his ass 5-6 days a week, grinding 50 hours every single day to make sure we had a roof over our head and food on the table. I hold a lot of respect for my dad, but he wasn't the most present father. He wasn't the most loving father. He never talked to us about our dreams, our goals, our ambitions, what we can do. And when I looked at every other man in my family, it was like drug addiction, sex addiction, alcohol addiction, depression, suicide. Like, this is the lineage that I come from. So I began to accept that is how I was made. But when I began to see other men in the world that were leading their families, that were having massive impact in what they were doing, I began to realize, like, this is what I've always been looking for. And through this group, I began to see that there was a unifying thing between all the men that I was beginning to surround myself with. They all were in different industries, right? They all were crushing their businesses. They all had families, but in a little different of a dynamic. The unifying piece for a lot of them was that the center of their life was Christ. And I'm not here to preach to anybody. This is my story. This has been my walk. But being around these men now that live their life Christ first began to show me good models and examples of what a real leader as a man should be in his home, in his community, in his companies. Like these men truly inspired me. So that was 2017. For a year and a half, I spent every single week, one day a week, I would go with this group of men. We'd work out together. Then we'd have lunch. And then the workouts and lunch turned into, why don't you come to dinner with our family this weekend? Why don't you come hang out at the house, join us with the pool? So I began to get accepted and loved by men that I'd never experienced before, like a brotherly type of love. Like, we want to support you, but we also want to challenge you to be better. And there was a particular individual in this group. His name is 𝗁𝗂𝗆𝘆𝗲. And I've had him on my podcast a couple times. But he was somebody that I spoke to weekly. Josh was there for me in the good. He was there for me in the bad. He was there for me whenever I needed. Well, that day, October 22nd, 2018, Josh was flying down from Philadelphia. So he lives in Pennsylvania. I live in Florida. We've been talking about it for a couple of weeks, that he was coming into town and wanted me to drive over and meet him. It was about an hour-long commute. And I was like excited to go see you, Josh. We're going to be talking about just catching up on the good stuff that we got going on. He runs a few different businesses, very successful man. Well, Josh knew that he was coming to Florida for a different reason. He knew for a long time that there was something on his heart that God had placed on his heart, and there's something that I needed to hear. So when I picked him up at his hotel and we drove to downtown Orlando, the main street that runs through downtown Orlando is called Church Street. So we pulled into a parking garage. We got off. We start walking down Church Street. I said, "There's a great restaurant right there, Josh. Why don't we go have lunch at the steakhouse? It'll be quiet, intimate. We can just have an amazing conversation." And I'll bring this to a close because I know it's getting really long-winded here. So we sit down, and literally within being there for 2 minutes, Josh goes, "Do you mind if I ask you a couple questions?" He said, "How's your relationship with your father? And what do you know about Jesus Christ?" And I was kind of taken back because 4 weeks prior to that, I had had a conversation with my girlfriend at the time where things weren't going well in our business. Things weren't really clicking in our relationship. And I remember saying, "Steph, I don't know what I'm not doing. Like, I feel like I have every box checked correctly. Maybe we need to go to church because all these guys that I'm spending time with have church in their life. So maybe that's what I'm missing. Why don't we go to church?" And just for context, like, I didn't have faith. I didn't have religion, no talk. None of this was in my background. Just always seeking, always seeking, always seeking. So when Josh brought that to me, it was like I was so open and willing and ready to accept it that literally we sat there for 2 hours in that restaurant that day. And he shared the entire, gospel with me. He shared with me, going from Genesis, Adam and Eve, all the way to Revelations. Who was Jesus? Why did he come here? What was this story in this man's life ultimately about? And how, if I accept him into my life, can things change for me? So we walked outside the restaurant to a history center. It was literally across the street. Josh placed his hands on me and we literally prayed together, and I accepted Christ into my life for the first time on that day, October 22nd, 2018. Now, the interesting part is literally 4 months later is when I made the choice to get porn out of my life. And the rest has been history, right? Top ranked podcasts. We've had a company mission now has helped 3,000 men radically transform their lives. I've been interviewed 100 plus times to share this story. So yeah, there's a lot of meaning there to me to that date, because for me, it was the day that I felt I was reborn.
Wow. That's a very intriguing story. And there was something you said that a few months before that day, things were not going as well as you wanted or you're expecting to. And you were wondering what it is that you're not doing because you felt like you were doing everything. And that is a situation that I'm sure many people can, or some people definitely can relate to that. I know I can relate to something like that. When you seemingly do everything, you tick the boxes, as you said, the actions are there, guided, by coaches or whatever else it is. Yet the results do not match the expectations of the action. So my question is, how do you think bringing faith and what you shared about understanding Jesus' life and purpose and all that, what do you think was the missing link that filled in that? If I take that to the business that we were talking about, and we will talk about a porn that you said and a little bit later on, but I just want to understand that in terms of the business. How do you think it helped get the results that you wanted? as in contrast with previously?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great question. And I think probably the best way to answer this is let's remove faith in Jesus out of the conversation, right? Because I don't want that to speak over somebody. I want to, because you asked a very specific question about business. I want to give the answer in a way that's actually going to answer your question. For me, what changed is I stopped looking at what I was doing as far as checking boxes to get things done to what am I doing to become the person that I'm supposed to be. So if somebody is struggling with their business and they're like, I'm doing all the things, well, stop doing the things. Figure out what the goal is within the business and then reverse engineer that through the lens and perspective of who do I need to become in order to achieve the success that I want. And I think for me, that's where Jesus has radically changed me. It's like, okay, if you focus on you, if you focus on becoming more like Christ every single day, and granted, you're aligned with what you really want in this world, the success is going to be inevitable, right? Because you focus on who it is you're showing up as every single day. So from a business perspective, stop focusing on the task or the daily habits or the daily check marks as like they're a to-do list. Begin to work towards becoming the person that you need to be to accomplish all the goals within your life. And here's the thing. If you become the person that can accomplish all your goals in your life and you set your aim correctly, you will have everything you want in this life. It's just going to be a byproduct of you having to become that person.
That's great. So becoming that person, does it mean that you compile a list of traits and characteristics and behaviors that this person that you want to become has, or is it a way of decision making every time, whether my decision is towards the person I want to become or not, or a combination of the two? I hope my question makes sense.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be a combination of the two, right? I think in order to become the person that you want to be, you got to get really clear on actually what you want. I don't think most people actually know what they want in this world. You know, they want to make more money. What does that mean? How much more money? And how long, until you want to get there. So how much money do you actually want to make? And when do you want to make that money? I want to grow and scale my business. What does that actually mean? What is scaling a company? So you got to get clear. And it's interesting because I saw a quote yesterday and it's speaking so true to this conversation, right? The hardest thing in life is getting clear on what you want. The easy part is getting it. Most people don't know what they want. They don't know what type of business. I want a successful company. What the hell does that mean? What is a successful company? Define success, define company. So I think the problem with most people is they're blindly running through life or running through business without any clear destination. You want to know why GPS systems work so well? Because you have a place where you currently are, your proximity, and you have a destination. And when you know where you currently are and you know where the destination is, the map is it's easy to just connect those two dots. Most people don't have a destination in life. So how are they ever going to become somebody that they don't know where it is they're trying to get to? So I think the first thing is you got to get really, really clear on what the goals and the outcome is you're working towards. The second thing I would say is you do want to work on the character development of that person. So if I know I want to achieve X goal, and in order for me to achieve this X goal, I need to become Y person. Well, what character traits, what daily habits, what belief systems, what friends does this person have? And become that person. Now, in the process of becoming that person is where the decisions are going to come into play, right? You got to make decisions aligned with who it is you want to be. But those decisions are a lot easier to make. This is discipline, right? Discipline is choosing what you want more over what you want now. If you're super clear on what you want in the future, very easily to stay disciplined. Why do people get distracted with pornography? Why do people get distracted on social media? Why do people get distracted all day throughout their entire life? Because they don't know what they want. There's no clear end destination. So the next distraction is very easily going to take you off track and off target. But if you knew every single day, this is who I need to be. This is exactly what Aggie needs to do today to become the person that he wants to be. You set that as your aim, and the distractions are no longer penetrable into your life. So I think it starts first with the clear aim and direction of what you want. Secondly, becomes the development of the character and the person. And then through that process, you're going to have to learn to make the right decisions. But I think it's a lot easier to make those decisions when you know what it is you want.
I want to take a short break from this episode and very quickly let you know about something I'm really excited about. For me, having a podcast made a tremendous difference in my life's journey, and I know the kind of impact it can have on one's personal development. And that is why I'm so passionate about this service I offer, helping coaches who are ready to amplify their message and reach a global audience by creating, launching and growing a top quality podcast, even if they aren't tech savvy and are limited on time. Maybe you've thought about having your own podcast, but you don't want to go through the time-consuming learning processes of how to create, launch it, or how to record, edit, host, and so on. If you said yes to that, then I got a solution for you, something that takes away all the complexity and allows you to only concentrate on creating quality content. Go to my website, 𝗁𝗁𝗄𝗆 to find out more and to get your free copy of my guide about creating and launching your podcast. Alright, let's jump back to the episode. Absolutely, and I think you're so right about many people not having a clear destination where they want to go, and words like success or they are being used very broadly without many times someone thinking, okay, what does that really mean? I want to be successful or I want to live a fulfilled life, or because it's different for everyone. It's not the same for two different people. So that's really important. And I want to also now connect this, what we were saying, and with, you mentioned the discipline, which obviously is a prerequisite because some of the actions that you will need to take will require a change in your mindset. And tell me if that is your experience with the people that you work with, that we need to make some subtle changes in the way that we think in order to be able to take these actions, to have the clearer destination. There is that phrase that says that the same thinking that brought you here where you are or created the problems that you have now can't be used to solve the problems and take you to the next level. You have to change your thinking. And I know that's, you do that, help others change their thinking. And there was, in that short introduction I gave of you, it was the body, mind and heart, or I suppose you mean the same as the soul or the spirit. Can we talk a bit more about the mind and the willpower, the discipline, the self-discipline, and cultivating that in order to be able to progress towards, this clear destination that we set?
Yeah. I mean, the mind is such a powerful thing, right? Within the mind, you have your conscious mind, you have your subconscious mind, then you have your unconscious mind, right? And I think a lot of people, they think just in terms of the conscious, right? Like, what am I actually able to control, have conscious awareness of, and make those decisions? But the subconscious mind is so much more powerful, right? Like, this is the part of us that is working that we're not in full control of. And then the unconscious, we don't get too deep into that. So let's just speak here to the conscious and then subconscious mind. The subconscious mind, it processes 11 million data points per second. The conscious mind processes 40 data points, not 40 million, 40. So what this means to people listening is that when you look out in the world, what you see, how you live, and what you experience this world to be is happening at an 11 million to 40 ratio, subconsciously versus consciously. That means you're not in control of how you're perceiving the world. And many times you're not in control of your initial reaction to things. This is all happening at a subconscious level. So when you're changing somebody's mind, you need to think about changing their subconscious programming, because changing your conscious thoughts is easy, right? I want to think about picking a bottle up. Think, pick bottle up, pick bottle up. That's a conscious thought that leads to a conscious action. They're very easy to do, right? Because I'm in the moment. I'm consciously aware of what I'm doing. If we want to change somebody's life, though, we want to produce a transformation within them and through them, we need to change the way that their subconscious mind works. Well, how do you change your subconscious mind? It's through your conscious actions. So listening to the words you speak about yourself. We all have this internal dialogue. If you drop something on the floor, what's your first response? Are you an idiot? Are you stupid because you dropped something? Or did you just have an accident where you slipped something? Very little things, right? But it reveals a lot to you about how you think about yourself. And your identity is nothing more than how you perceive yourself to be showing up in the world. So how do you change that though, right? That was the question. You need to be conscious and you need to be aware and super intentional about reprogramming those subconscious thoughts. One thing I think that is powerful for most people is if you don't have a daily journaling exercise, at the end of the day, start doing it. This is what's known as metacognition. When you spend time every day thinking about what you've been thinking about. So we have anywhere from 11 to 50,000 thoughts that run through our head, right? You look at different research and data reports. It'll say 11,000 will be on one research, 50,000 on another one. But it's a big range. All that matters is there's a lot of thoughts that are coming into our head that we don't even pay attention to. But if you get into the habit and practice of 5-10 minutes at the end of the day, journaling on your thoughts, what was I thinking about today? Like when I was at the gym and I saw the blonde chick, why did my thoughts go there, right? I work with the guys that are struggling with porn addiction. So a lot of what I talk to is those guys, right? But when I was out with my wife after work and we were having dinner, the way that I responded to what she said to me, why did I react that way? You know, like, was this triggered because I was tired and I was stressed? Was this triggered because she pulled something out of me that I know is there and I need to change? So I think a lot of people can make a lot of headway in transforming their life is if they just spent time thinking about what you've been thinking about. Because what that's going to do is now when those thoughts begin to randomly appear, you're going to be aware of them. You'll be like, oh, I was journaling about that 2 nights ago. Let me spend some time here in this moment and think about this. Let me process this in real time. Let me change the way I would initially responded. So you want to change how you're acting. You want to change how you're responding. You got to get underneath these things and begin to get clear on how you're thinking throughout the day. But I think you can change your subconscious mind by your conscious thoughts that you intentionally drive into it. So the journaling would be one. Living in a state of gratitude is incredibly powerful as well. This is something that we coach a lot of our men is having a morning gratitude practice, because what it does is it shifts your perspective, right? You know, a lot of people wake up the day, they're stressed. Emails are already coming in. They're like, I got a to-do list of 1,000 things to do. Oh my God, it's so overwhelming. Like this life is crazy. I'm never going to get out of this hole. Well, if you just pause for a moment and you're like, I'm just happy to be alive, God. Thank you so much for another day. How would that change your state now moving into your day? We're all stressed, right? There's a lot of things. I got 6 podcasts in the next 3.5 days. I don't know how I'm going to get all this done. There's a long calendar sitting in front of me. I could be stressed. I could be overwhelmed, or I could be grateful that people actually want to talk to Frank and people want to hear what I have to say. So by starting your day from a place of gratitude, you've now shown up in the world as like, I'm just happy to be here and I'm grateful for this life. And what's cool is there's this part of our brain called the reticular activating system. It sits here in the prefrontal cortex. And what it does is it filters out what's not important to us. And it shows us what is really important in our lives, right? You know, we've all experienced this when we buy a new car. We're going out, we're test driving different things. You're shopping at Ford, Chevy, you're driving the red Mustang here or there. You sign that paperwork, you pull the car off the lot. Literally, you're seeing that same car everywhere you go. And it's like, no, those cars were always there. You just turned your brain on to seeing that those are important. So if you start your day with things to be grateful for, as you're navigating your stressful life, things to be grateful for will begin to appear more regularly to you. So I think 2 things that people can do to change their mindset is having a gratitude practice first thing in the day to frame that perspective of how we're going to show up into the world, and ending the day in a metacognition practice where you think about what you've been thinking about. And it's not going to radically change like overnight. The first practice of gratitude is not going to like feel like you're showing up as a different person, but consistency compounds, right? So if you do this for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, you're now showing up in the world and everybody's going to be like, Aggie's, he's the nicest person to be around. His energy when he walks into the room, he's so infectious. Like I want more of him. So that would be 2 things there. I think that could really help a lot of people.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. This reflective journaling is it's so important, and also, of course, the gratitude. May I add to that? I will add a third one and actually ask you about the third one, because it's one of your things, and that is as a tool to improve on our mindset, and that is physical exercise, training our bodies. So can we connect that as well now? And Of course, there is, and you have a quote on your website from Socrates, which was it's also one of my favorite quotes about not being an amateur in the matters of physical training, because it is a disgrace to live one's life without realizing how beautiful and powerful the body can become. So let's tell me about, in particular, the physical training, and maybe which aspects of physical training, because many people do physical exercise in one form or the other. But I suppose you will agree with me, not necessarily all kinds of exercise will produce that, let's say, improvement in your mindset.
Yeah, no, I've loved that quote, and it's been on the site, and it's been in my email signature for years now, right? And there's gratitude built into that quote through Socrates, right? It's like we're grateful just to have this one body. Think about it; it's the only one we have. Like people will spend thousands of dollars a year maintaining their car and won't spend a nickel maintaining their body. Your car could break down. I could go buy a new car today if I really wanted to, right? This is the only body that I've been given. So I think a lot of people have just their priorities misaligned. Like they care more about the car sitting in the driveway than they do about the body that's going to take them everywhere that they're going to go for the rest of their life. No, you said it, man. Is all training created equal? No. I have a background as a bodybuilder, right? So for me, it was hypertrophy focused. It was strength training. It was high intensity cardio. I used lifting and training as a tool to build my body, muscular wise. Like that was the goal. I think they can all work. I think movement is medicine, though. So I think, I'm not here to tell people if your type of training is not proper. I think it would go back to what we talked about at the beginning, though, right? Is know who you want to be, know what body you want to have, know what life you want to live, and then get the training that's in accordance with that. If you say you want to be a marathon, right? So right now I'm training for a half marathon, right? It's something completely different than I've ever done. I spent 10 years trying to build as much muscle as I possibly could. Training like I did for a decade to get ready for a marathon wouldn't make a whole lot of sense, right? But knowing that I want to run a half marathon in 6 months, I was able to go out and find the guy that has worked with bodybuilders before and has helped them prep to run half marathons and marathons. So if you know who you want to be, it's easy to get the training that's going to align with that. But yeah, I think everybody's got to have some type of physical training built into their life. What does that look like? I'm not here to tell people. I think you got to know who you want to be in order to get clear on that. But I think some type of physical training, whether it's powerlifting, whether it's yoga, Pilates. I mean, there's so many great things. I mean, I have friends that like they go out in their backyard and they throw sandbags around and they climb on trees and stuff like that. Incredible shape, incredibly fit. Are they big and muscular? As big and muscular as they want to be because they know who they want to be and they built their training around that.
Mm-hmm. That's a great answer. And it's very interesting what you said about running and the half marathon, because my thing is running and I ran the London Marathon last year. However, my let's say my weightlifting skills are not that great. So I have found in the channel of running and exercising with running my own and it also needs a great deal of discipline to be able to do that consistency, and that discipline, especially when you train for an event. But even without that, the discipline, the consistency to show up 3 times a week or whatever you decide to do 5 times a week and move and exercise and in whatever way you want, that consistency, that self-discipline, I believe spills across in other areas of your life as well. The more disciplined you are in this, you will tend to become more disciplined in your other behavior. That's how I look at it anyway. I don't know if you agree with me.
No, I agree. I agree 100%. And, language that we would, use around that is how you do one thing is how you do everything. Right.
Yeah.
This is why the guys that specifically come into, our coaching program, they're here to solve a specific problem. Like, we have a company built around coaching men that are struggling with pornography addiction. They come in here thinking that all I'm going to do is help them keep their hands and eyes off of pornography. But I know that that's not the case, right? You're chasing pornography because there's other areas of your life that we're not fully aligned in. So we solve their problem with pornography addiction by getting aligned, by living with integrity in every single area of our life. Because if how you do one thing is how you do everything, if you say I'm going to stop looking at pornography, if you're a man that walks and lives in integrity, you will stop looking at pornography. So we need to identify the other areas in your life where you're saying you're going to do things and you're not actually showing up. And we'll solve those problems by you beginning to show up, build the confidence now within yourself. Oh, when I actually say things that I'm going to do, I live them out. So you build now a positive reputation with yourself, that when Aggie says he's going to do something, I can count on him. This is why I love being friends with Navy SEALs, right? Navy SEALs are people that when they say they're going to do something, it gets done. And most often not, it gets done at the highest level. Those are the type of people that I want to surround myself with, because that's who I want to be. I want to be the guy that when they call on Frank to get something done, there's no doubt that it's going to get done, and it's going to be done at the highest level. And this is in service of others, but most importantly, this is in service to myself, because there's a relationship that we have with ourselves. And if most people treat themselves like shit, right? The conversation, like we talked about, the internal dialogue, the beating themselves up, the negative self-talk, the not treating themselves, the not prioritizing sleep, the not prioritizing health, the not prioritizing recovery, the not prioritizing training. This is your relationship with yourself. You're basically telling yourself you're not important. You're not important to get a good night's sleep. You're not important to have a mission that you're working on. You're not important to take care of your health. So I don't remember the original question here because I went on a tangent, but hopefully something here landed.
Absolutely, it did. And you mentioned also that, because I said about spilling over, the self-discipline spilling over in other areas of your life.
The alignment with everything in your life. Yeah,
but it is
how you
also,
do one thing is how you do everything, bro. I mean, that's as true as it can be.
It certainly is. It certainly is. No matter how one tries to deny it, it's even the little things. When you overlook a detail, it means that there are other things that you do as well. And I liked very much how you said about negative aspects of our life or behavior spilling over the other areas without us realizing that it's coming from there. And I also, briefly, I want to ask you a couple of questions about pornography and pornography addiction, since this is the thing that you really help the most with your coaching. Yeah. And it's not a topic that is discussed so much, at least as far as I am aware. I haven't maybe been in the circles of people discussing it, but I don't think it is discussed as much as the issue exists. So if I were to ask you, so how prevalent from your experience this pornography addiction is, and in a word really or two, how does it affect someone who and their life and their relationship? And I know, and forgive me, that this is not a question that you can answer very quickly. So, but it is a topic that I certainly didn't want to leave out of the conversation. Yeah. So, share with us.
I appreciate that. So how prevalent is it? It's a tough one to really gather, real factual data, right? Because in order to get this, you have to get men and people that are willing to admit many times their darkest secrets about their own life, right? You can see some different studies out there, some different research. I think one that I saw said that they had, I think it was 1,200 to 1,500 men that they surveyed. And so 70%, so let's say 1,000 men, 70% of those men admitted to consuming pornography within the last 30 days. So this would be regular consumption of it, right? So you have 1,000, now that brings it down to 70% of those men. So 700 would admit to having a regular porn consumption. So now out of that 70% of men that are regularly consuming it, somewhere between 40 to 45% of them admit to having a problem that is somewhere out of their own control. So this could probably be labeled as a compulsive behavior, an addiction, something that I don't have full control over. So to answer your question, 1,000 men comes down to 700. You then take 45% of those men. So out of every 1,000 men, you have roughly 300 to 350 of them that are probably struggling with a porn addiction, something that could be clinically labeled or accepted as a pornography addiction. So that's the prevalence of it, right? Is almost half of the men. And I think that number is rapidly on the upswing because we're living in the first generation with a group of men, young men that have had pornography in their pocket 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'm 39 years old. The first pornography I saw was in a 2D magazine. Now at 6 years old, you're getting kids that are consuming the most graphic, hardcore material. So we're seeing it accelerate at a rate and growth that we've never seen before. But let's just say it's a major problem with probably half of the men in the world today. What happens though, right? That was the next question, is what is the impact on the men? Way number one, it crushes their heart and soul, right? You begin to become a spectator of sex and intimacy as somebody that can actually participate in it. We talked a lot about the subconscious mind, right? So you're spending hours every single day training, conditioning yourself that when sex is taking place, I'm supposed to be on the sidelines as a spectator, not in the act of it. So it creates this environment within men and young boys that they objectify every single woman that they look at. That's debilitating to the young boy's mind, to his eyes, to his heart, but it's also crushing to the girl, right? Because now every young woman that is growing up is nothing more than a sexual object to every single man that she has ever met. So major impact on the relationship side of things, right? Another thing it does to our brain is it hijacks our dopamine reward center. I'm sure you have a lot of understanding on dopamine, chemicals, goal-associated motivation with supernormal stimulus like pornography. So it gives it this massive spike of dopamine. Anytime you get a massive spike, it follows by this dip. So it creates this sense where like, I don't want to do anything of good or aligned with my goals, because why would I want dopamine when I know I'm just going to get a supernormal stimulus from pornography? But then that cycle, because like dopamine is pain or pleasure and pain. So you get a massive spike of pleasure. Somewhere 48 hours later, it's going to be a massive, dip in the pain side, depression, anxiety, self-sabotage, comparison to others, self-limiting beliefs about themselves. It creates this cycle within men where they're chasing pornography to make them feel good. Then they're riddled with guilt and shame because they're like, I don't actually like this. And now I'm depressed about what I'm doing. And I don't think I'm actually a good person. There's sexual performance issues. So there's a term now. This is a new term, PIED, porn-induced erectile dysfunction. We're seeing young men in their 20s when their hormones should be thriving. This should be the most thriving period of a young man's life. He can't get erections. He can't sexually perform. He can't get aroused with real women because he's been training himself that I'm supposed to be on the sidelines spectating it. So there's a lot there, but I think, roughly half of the men are struggling with it. And there's a major impact both on men, on women, on girls, on relationships, and on society at large.
Wow, to be honest, I'm shocked at the number. I wasn't expecting to hear such a huge number. Thank you for your answer and how you managed to condense it into a few minutes. So that's amazing. Taking on that, people who have listened to this conversation so far and find that there is more that they would like to learn or do, hopefully, about this. What is the place you want to direct them? And then I want to ask you also some quick fire questions, but I want to go through that because I think we will find many people that would like to know more about much more than we had the chance to cover today anyway.
And I appreciate the opportunity here. I've really enjoyed this conversation today. Really did. For people on the porn side, if what I said there is kind of like, I definitely want to learn more, I would direct you to our YouTube page. It's Coach Frank Rich. Do 2 videos every single day. And we've done a video every day for almost 2+ years now. So there's a lot of content, a lot of education, strategies, tips, resources. You can download a free book that we have there as well. If you just enjoyed this conversation about personal development and self-growth and becoming a better version of yourself, I'll direct those listeners to my podcast, The Superhuman Life. We got you upcoming on an upcoming episode. I know we're going to have an amazing conversation around. So we host an interview style show just like this, where we dive deep into men's personal development, mindset, faith, belief systems, how to change your identity, how to biohack your performance. So that's at The Superhuman Life. So those would be the best two places, YouTube or on the podcast side of things.
That's amazing. Thank you very much. That's great. So let me ask some final quick-fire questions then, Frank, to wrap things up. So my first one to you is, what does personal development mean to you?
Personal development mean to me? I mean, the development of a person at one level, man. No, I think, God, I would love to see personal development become like the new education. I think it's something we all need. I think it should be mandatory for everybody. But I think personal development at its core is the insights, the mindsets, the belief systems, the strategies to grow into becoming the person that you were born or created to be, that best version of yourself. Personal development is the gateway or the path to doing that.
And one hypothetical question, let's say you could go back in time and meet your 18-year-old self. What's one piece of advice you would give him?
It's going to be okay.
Amazing. You can see me smiling because it is such a variation of this answer that you've given me is so common among the answers, the hundreds of answers I've received in the podcast. It's
well, I wouldn't want to go back and redirect his life where anything is going to be different. So I wanted to avoid changing the path that he went on. But I also wanted to let him know that in those moments when he felt like it was end, like there was no way out of it, in those moments of the walls feeling like they're collapsing in on you, in the darkest periods of your life, when I contemplated taking it all, just knowing that it was going to be okay, I think for me would have really, really helped. But that's a tough one, right? Because I'm so happy with where I'm at. I'm at such a peaceful place within my life that if anything had happened differently, I don't think I'd be in this exact same place. So I want to avoid changing the path of my life, but maybe providing a little bit of comfort and peace along the journey.
Yeah, that reassurance, we need that. And one last one, Frank, what's one book that you would recommend to the listener based on the conversation we had?
God, there's so many of them, man. I mean, I'm looking behind you, and I think this is the backdrop that you have. But I don't know if you can see me. I mean, there's 500-600 books here that I've read over the last decade, man. So to pull one out of there, but maybe for this conversation, because I felt like we spoke a lot about taking consistent action. I think we spoke a lot about the need to work through struggle and just showing up daily and not being too attached to like the end goal, the end outcome, right? Like showing up daily to do these things, to grow into who it is you're becoming. One book that changed my life back in 2015 was The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson, I think is the author. So it's a variation of The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. Darren Hardy talks about stacking progress, stacking wins day after day after day. The Slight Edge is the same logic, same concept behind it, but it radically transformed me because I stopped looking at like just the daily task as like, I'm getting this done today, and then tomorrow I'm starting over. Then the next day I'm starting over. It's like, no, what you do today, you stack on top of that tomorrow. Then you stack on top of those 2 days the next day. And if you do that 30, 60, 90, 180, 365 days, now your stack is as high to the roof as it could possibly be. So there's a lot of power in consistency. There's a lot of power in the compounding effect. And I think The Slight Edge, Jeff, I think he does an amazing job of bringing all that home and making it really clear.
Frank, I want to thank you very much for our conversation, for you sharing. There was some incredible value and actionable items that you shared. I was still that reflective journaling and the gratitude, among other things. They are the two that come to mind. I want to wish you all the very best with your mission and your podcast and everything that you do to help others. Any last parting words from you?
No, man, I've really enjoyed this conversation today. Agi did a great job of holding the flow. I appreciate the listeners for sticking around, and anybody that's looking for help and has questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. But this has been an absolute honor. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you got great value from today's episode. And if you'd be so kind, will you please share this episode with a friend who you think will benefit from listening? And until next time, stand out, don't fit in.